Let me just say again, a very very warm welcome to every one of you. All right, we are having a slight technical problem here, but we're going to resolve that in a very short moment. So I'm just keep going. We're all right. The studio is okay. It's on my end. So let me just say this: that tonight my very special guests are Mr. Alvin Thomas, Mr. Marcus Rossi, and Mr. Kent Vital. We're hoping to have Brian Linton with us a little bit later on, but he's not yet with us. And the topic tonight is our nature island, Dominica, the year in review. So we're having a conversation. As a matter of fact, we're going to be having a three-part series because we had many people who wanted to be involved in the conversation at the year end to review what we think transpired over the course of the last year and even before that in Dominica. And so we thought we'd have three conversations. One tonight, where I'll be speaking with Ken Vital and Marcus Rossi, Alvin Thomas, and hopefully Brian Linton later. This is the people's voice tonight. And then tomorrow night, we're hoping to have three or four ladies. And so it will be the ladies' voice. And then on Tuesday night, we'll have the regular program with a panel, hopefully with if Dr. Justice, Dr. Irving Andre, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, Dr. Dion George, and Dr. Swinburne Augustine, some of the usual panels there with us on a Global View on Q. And so we're going to be doing these 3 nights of this because it's important to review where we are and then to sort of make recommendations as to where we want to be going forward in the future in 2022. So I hope every Dominican everywhere had a terrific Christmas season and whatever their circumstances permitted. And we hope that you will have a great 2022. So we're just about, what, 5 days, I believe, before the end of the year. So the new year 2022 will be with us in 5 days' time. And there are many issues that I feel that we had to review and that we have to see how we can do better in 2022. So I expect that we will look at the whole question of uh, the COVID pandemic, which made an impact on our lives in 2021 and beyond that, before that, and the CCG and justice, corruption, citizen by investment, or some would say this mono passport selling economy, and certainly the imperative for electoral and campaign finance reforms. So there are many other things that we will be discussing tonight, and certainly we'll discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and the dangerous. We'll examine the way forward by looking into the rearview mirror at first and then looking at the lessons learned. We will make recommendations about the way forward for 2022, and we'll see and consider what Dominicans and friends of Dominica who are abroad can do to help improve our fortunes in these regards. So again, I want to thank our healthcare workers. I'm not going to be staying too long with the talking points. I just want to thank our healthcare providers and frontline workers for doing their best to keep us safe and ask all of us to just play it safe and stay alive and follow the protocols. Um, DJ Shan will with us and later Lambi might join us. So DJ Shan will take your calls on the console and showing as usual is keeping us on the air. So here are some of the things that I think our panelists may want to consider. I'm really leaving it up to them to talk about whatever issues that they want to talk about. But the question is, where are we in the managing the dreaded COVID-19 virus and its variants? Because as I said, the question of corruption and justice and the CCJ, we saw what happened to that CCJ ruling. We see what is happening in this passport economy. We see the question of electoral reform and campaign finance reforms. We're going to be talking about these issues for the 3 nights because it's important for us, especially this electoral reform, campaign finance reform. The whole question of crime, violence, and the apparent disrespect for human life. Appears to be on the rise now. And it's Dominica's fledgling economy and democracy and the rule of law under threat. Our electoral laws being blatantly breached. There's a few other talking points. Are the revelations contained in Dominica's Director of Audit 2019 report justified? Are those recommendations, are those suggestions justified? Are the frequent capital projects, cost overruns, constant requests for supplementary appropriations, a symptom of a much deeper problem? How do we compare our sister islands in terms of economic and social progress? And our statistics revealing that we are falling behind our sister Caribbean islands. What about the wealth creation for the people and by the people? All of those issues. I mean, where are we on all of those issues? So very happy that you could join us wherever you are in your neck of the woods. Please stay with us tonight as we discuss this very important topic about a review of what happened in Dominica over the past year. I want to go first to, as we start, I want to go first to Kent Vital to get the ball rolling because there's so many things that we want to talk about. And I know that Alvin Thomas also has this, we have been talking about the whole notion of resilience and sustainability for a long time. Where are we on that? We talk about creed. What is creed up to? So I hope Alvin will be able to help us with some of that as well. And Marcus will just speak about the things that he's been concerned about over the last 12 months and beyond that. So certainly we're looking to get the people's voice tonight and we'll take your calls. We'll be welcoming your calls as we go along. Within the first 45 minutes or so, we'll have a chat and then we'll try to open the lines and take your calls. Hope you will join us tonight. Let me just go over to Kent for your opening remarks. Kent, how are you doing?
I am pretty good, Sheridan. Good night to all the listeners.
Hope
Good
you had
night
a
to.
reasonable good Christmas weekend.
Yes, I did, and it's still going on. It's still going on. I have a group of friends coming over tomorrow to enjoy the river. I'm fortunate to live by a lovely river, a lovely Masse, and
That's
we're going to, just a few of us, just going to cook some food and just hang a little bit. But thank God for that.
well, this is what it's all about, isn't it? I mean, Christmas times is family gatherings and friends, and you forget you immerse yourself in all of this food and laughter and drinks and fun.
Yeah.
That's good company, right?
Yes, man. So I want to wish everyone a joyous season. It is, um, one day, 2 days have already gone. There's still how many days? Well, they say 21 days, but the first day of Christmas, how many? 12 days? So how the song goes?
Marcus is the man of the cloth. He might be able to help us more with that. But I know some people like to celebrate Christmas until the end of the first week of January.
All right.
What are your thoughts on that, Marcus?
Sheridan, I don't go all out like that, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
Basically for low profile. And
yes.
I often, when Christmas come around, tell you the truth, I often think of Dominican growing up as a young chap, where it was more like a family time, food and fun, where what I look at today and I sit and listen to all what's taking place on the island is totally, out of character for what I grew up with. We were one big loving family. I mean, most people say, well, everybody knows everybody in Dominica. To some degree, that might be true, but I don't really cater to that kind of statement. But everybody I knew growing up in Dominica was full of love. We loved everybody. It was no division like we see now. And this is the reason why we on here now trying to chant down this kind of corruption and the divisiveness of the whole country in a partisan political way, not to say political, because people tend to say you put politics in everything, but politics is in everything. But when we exercise the partisan politics, that's where we really go overboard, and we got to know when to stop that partisan politics. We have an election, and the election is over. We get together to build a country after the winner takes his place, and then to lead the country as one nation, not as two countries. And basically, that's where I'm at with that. But as far as the holidays, I really having fun with it, enjoy myself, even considering the COVID situation, talk to people on the telephone who you haven't spoken to in a while with a little web uh, or Zoom type meeting, but it's all good. I really enjoy that.
Well, yes, and I'm sure that Alvin is probably spending a lot of time with family over the weekend. Alvin, how's it going?
Yes, well, I can't complain. Like Marcus said, we kind of slowly losing the real tradition, Christmas as we know it growing up. But like everything else, the world, as they say, is evolving. So obviously, whereas when as a little boy I look forward to a little starlight and bandit and a cock gun or some thing like that. Kids today want the iPad and the Nintendo and all these electronic gadgets. I will say though that as 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 my family expand by way of the grand, I don't look forward to Christmas. I mean, when you have 7 grandkids added to the kids and the rest of it, you don't look forward to Christmas. I said, can it delay for a little while?
Yeah,
But
that's the time to spend a couple of dollars, right?
yes, yes, yes. But it was nice. It was family time pretty much, quiet. All the kids are grown now on their own and on their own, scheme of things. So it's basically Catherine and myself. So we had a pretty nice, quiet, decent Christmas, So look forward to it, as I always tell folks, and I told some of my friends. I mean, given where we are now with the pandemic over the last 2 years plus, when you consider folks like myself, guys like me, not as young as you, Sheridan, and the rest of the crew, that we've made it through. We've made it through that pandemic and come where we are today. There's a lot to be thankful for. There's a lot to
Yeah.
be grateful for. We're blessed. I mean, I know friends of mine. I have not any family, but very close friends of mine who had succumbed to the COVID and passed. So we got to take that into perspective. And if we're here today, as young as we are, as old as we are, and having lived through this thing, and now you have all kind of variants coming through, we got to be really thankful. So for that, I'm really blessed, I must say, and thankful for that. So it's
Excellent.
good.
Excellent, Alvin. Now, Kent, as I go back to you to really get the ball rolling, let me just announce, first of all, that tomorrow night we will have the ladies' voice, and very distinguished ladies at that. We'll be having Dr. Simone Matthew, Miss Marceline Edwards, and Mrs. Cara Shillingford Marsh. Hopefully, so I think they're going to give us their perspective about how they saw the year in review in Dominica, and even go back a little bit before that, and their own recommendations from their perspective, the way forward for Dominica 2022 going forward. So I just want to shout out to all these ladies and thank them for coming on board, and Dr. Andre and Dr. Thompson Fontaine and Dr. Leon George, and then and Dr. Swinburne Augustine on Tuesday. And I know that Dr. Swinburne Augustine will bring us up to date on what's happening with COVID, being a scientist. So Kent, let me just go back to you so we can get our conversation really going here tonight.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to focus a little bit on the economic element tonight. And but when we look at our performance in 2021, we have to understand the context. So we have to look to the year before when we were ravaged by the pandemic. And in that year, we had a decline in the economy of 17% or so. Decline, that there was about a 56% decline in construction, 64% decline in value added in the hotel and tourism sector. Most sectors got affected, as we all know, and it's not just Dominica, it happened right through the Caribbean, right through the world. So we have to understand that we're coming from that very devastating year. And then even before that, in Dominica, we had the impact of Hurricane Maria that affected so many businesses, some tourism businesses as well. Local tourism businesses got badly damaged by Hurricane Maria, and agriculture and a whole host of stuff. But having said that, we have to understand that prior to the pandemic, prior to Maria, the economy was already weak. The economy was really weak. Agriculture was not doing very well. Very few markets. The huckster did a little thing. The huckster did something, brought in a little activity, but by and large had no strong markets for agriculture or agro-processed products. Tourism sector hadn't picked up. We had one of the weakest tourism industries in the entire OECS, at least. Very, very, very weak. Although there was some hope that the CBI would have resulted in the construction of a couple of hotels. We saw Kempinski been constructed. We saw Jungle Bay. So we had some hope that we would have had some movement in tourism after so many years of not having any movement. But having said that, we also missed the opportunity for using the CBI resources more effectively. So although we had the hope of some hotels being constructed, that benefit seemed to have gone to a few friends of the ruling region. That benefit did not filter down to so many of our hotels, our small hotels, which got affected by the Hurricane Maria. And even before that, that benefit did not filter down to them. We do need the larger hotels, don't get me wrong, but we did not seem to use the economic seasoning program to empower those hoteliers who were trying so hard all along. So we also saw the mismanagement of the resources. We can only compare to our fellow countries like St. Kitts, like Antigua, like St. Lucia, and see how they have used their resources. They have used it to lower debt. They have used it to build infrastructure. I mean, if you see what's going on in these countries compared to what's going on with us, you clearly see the mismanagement of the CBI resources, and including possibly the allocation of some of the resources for the personal gain of a few rather than for the entire country. So that's the context in which we have to look at 2021. So come 2021, what do we see? And what we see, so if we were to start in the tourism industry, for instance, we see in 2021 that the situation continued. I just spoke to a guy who runs a small business, and he's part of a chat, a hotel chat. He said, man, there's no business. There's if any, I mean, actually, he told me there's no business. Then I spoke to somebody else, and I understand that some of the larger hotels like Kempinski seem to be picking up a little bit. But by and large, many of these smaller hotels, well, they were those who got affected by the hurricane and they have not been able to come back anyway. But then many of the even smaller hotels who run Airbnb and some of those things, they're struggling. There was a little hope when the quarantine requirement was on, and some hotels benefited from that. But since the vaccination, that business has evaporated and it has not been replaced by regular business for many of these hotels. Now, if you look at some of the other countries like Barbados, St. Lucia's, Antigua, what you see is a strong resurgence of tourism with the vaccination and the management of their programs. We see a lot of those tourists are coming back. I have people in Barbados who are telling me that. And so, but in Dominica, you're not seeing that. Although I said there seem to be some business, some little business at Kempinski. I'm not sure how strong that is. I don't believe it is very, very strong though, but I understand there's some business there. Maybe at the other one to Jungle Bay, I'm not sure about that. But from what I'm hearing from the smaller businesses in Dominica, that there is very, very little business. So now I recall Barbados had launched what they call the Barbados Passport. Barbados Passport was a special program, recognizing at the time they were controlling the pandemic very well. And they launched this program, inviting people to come for long stays and work in Barbados. And that did very well for Barbados. I think many other countries tried it. I have not followed how successful it was for the other Caribbean countries that tried it. And there's nothing wrong in seeing a good idea and trying it as well. So I have no issue with this. Dominica also tried it. I recall someone can correct me that there was some announcement this year of that kind of program. I don't believe there have been any response to that. Now, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because our situation continues. Lack of air access, lack of international airport. Well, recently we seem to have gotten a little breakthrough with American Airlines, coming in December, starting in December, but lack of air access. But more than just that, an environment that's not conducive to business. Don't think that people do not do their research. And what I see for Dominica is a lot of lies. When we promote the CBI, when we promote many things on Dominica, the current region, when I look at some of these promotions that they put out there, it's a lot of lies, a lot of misrepresentation of Dominica, or what the situation really is. But don't think that fools the real investor, the real visitor who wants to come. They do their research. if someone wants to come and stay in Dominica for long stay, they do their research. Barbados program worked, Dominica's is not, because we don't have a government who have put in place a work environment that is attractive to businesses. So our tourism sector continues to struggle. Let's look at another sector, agriculture. It was weak before the hurricane. It was before Maria. It got worse with COVID, as we said. Hucksters struggled because of the way our huckster trade goes on. Hucksters buy food here, they go with it or send it over there. They tend to go and do their own marketing and so on. And with that kind of physical presence, both here and abroad, of the huckster, obviously the pandemic would have disrupted that tremendously. That model needs to change a bit if we are to do better with the huckster trade. But nevertheless, the huckster trade still appears to be subdued in 2021. I'm not just telling you that. I live it because I do some agriculture myself. I have brothers and not brothers, but brothers-in-laws that do agriculture. So I know farmers are struggling. I have friends in my adopted village who in Good Hope and so on. And farmers are struggling. So the agriculture sector remains extremely weak. No new markets have emerged in 2021. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, no new hucksters, no new markets have emerged. And then there was this World Bank program, and I have asked before and I'll ask again. There was this World Bank program where they gave farmers agricultural tools and fertilizers and attempting to resuscitate agriculture. And I would tell you, if you look at the figures, the GDP figures, it would look as if agriculture production is up. You'll see growth in agriculture. But you see, that growth in agriculture doesn't square with what I hear from farmers. Farmers are struggling, they can't sell. So the problem in the first place was always that you are doing all of this, and I mean, I would like somebody from World Bank to tell me whether they have actually designed a program like this without giving adequate thought to the marketing element. Farmers cannot sell, we cannot move our stuff. So it seems like there was some increase in production, which showed up in terms of the figures. You would see if you look at 2020 and 2021 projections, they're projecting that agricultural production would have increased, and it may have in terms of the production itself. But you increase production and cannot sell. What sense does it make? So I always question, how could you come up with a World Bank project like that without paying sufficient attention to the marketing element? Because that seemed to be the great failure. Farmers cannot sell anything. There is no organization. That was one of the things that happened in 21, a World Bank project that really seemed to have resulted in some increase in production, but farmers are struggling. And you know what's going to happen in return? Farmers are going to be discouraged. In fact, they are already getting discouraged. I have some plantains to sell, and I was going to get it to a gentleman tomorrow, some of them. And my brother-in-law was beginning to tell me that right now, you know, there seemed to be a slump from a few months ago when there was an oversupply. But you know, the typical thing that happens in agriculture, you produce a lot, you cannot sell, then farmers get discouraged, and then they don't produce. So we are going to get to the cycle where they're not going to produce because the World Bank project seemed to have failed. And I've asked before, was the project designed with marketing as a key element, or was it designed as a food security program? Now, if it was designed as a food security program, that's a major failure because food security was never the issue. Yes, it's true after the hurricane, production got, you know, affected because of the winds. But farmers were always going to go back in and produce their carrots for sale and for local production. So it couldn't have been a food security issue. So if the World Bank designed this with a major aim being food security, it's a major flaw. You cannot design a project like that without thinking seriously of marketing. So is it a World Bank failure or is it a Dominica failure? I don't know. I've asked that question before. Did World Bank look into the marketing element? But that's a shame. It's a shame our farmers are struggling. They cannot sell their produce. And that was the reality of 2021. And I don't see it changing in 2022. I see farmers being discouraged. Now, I don't see it changing from the government point of view, don't get me wrong, because my encouragement to Dominicans is that despite the government, we have to rise to the occasion. And I am beginning to look forward to doing that myself. I've said that several times before, and I'm closer to organizing. And I know many others have come to me and say, look, we have to do this thing in spite of the government. We have to begin to organize. If the government cannot do what they need to do to move our agriculture forward, those of us who have some ideas, we have to try to see what we can do. So when I say it doesn't appear or it will not have, it doesn't appear that it will be any better next year, I'm saying that from the point of view, given what I've seen from the government and all the departments, I do not see any programs that they have aired or they have voiced that will make any difference. But we, the people, we've got to make a difference. Now, you look to construction. I will stop in a while because I know there are other things I don't want to, but we saw in 2020 there was a slump in construction, 50-something% or so, and we know why, because of the pandemic. We see some recovery or some increase in government activity in 2021. We see some activity started finally on the road going from Hatton Garden to Pokase. No, not Pokase, the junction of Castle Bruce, Emerald Pool Junction, that area there. We saw construction on that. I think it's funded by the World Bank. And that seemed to be progressing well. I live somewhere on that road. So that seemed to be progressing well. We saw some bridges and so on. But here is the cry of the people. You have some of that happening. You see very few locals working there. I mean, I am all for the hardworking people who want to come to Dominican work, but there seems to be a failure to me in our construction activity in that we have not channeled a lot of that employment activity to our local people. That seemed to be the case. Why is that the case? Is it that we did not put the right structures in place to attract the locals into the industry, or was it deliberate? So that's one of the things we see in construction. We saw in terms of the airport, we saw the government put out the intention to construct the international airport, and we know of all the difficulties associated with that. We are very wary as a people of the government's governance of the resources. So we are very wary whether or not they will manage this properly, if at all they will be able to secure the money, because we do know the CBI program is under stress. In many of the countries, CBI revenue has fallen, at least for 2020. I am not sure what has happened for 2021, but the resources are under stress and will be under stress going forward. As to whether the government will actually be able to do this, or whether it's just a fast one they're putting on Dominicans, we will see. We do think Dominica needs an international airport. It's something that any political party, any government should pursue. And we saw that they have moved to sign some sort of contract. I mean, you sometimes wonder how many contracts are they signing. I mean, is it just smoke screens they are sending at us? Every now and then they have to announce something. Will we actually see construction? We want to see it. For Dominica's sake, we want to see it. But the truth is, we just don't trust this government. And when we see more, we will be happy. Then we also saw flights from, as I mentioned earlier on, and that's a good thing. We saw an inaugural flight from American Airlines, and as a people, we have to take advantage of that. But let's see how that will continue in as the country recovers, as vaccinations are in place, or as the pandemic recedes. I think the pandemic is receding. I think by next year, as many people believe, and by 2022, hopefully that will be behind us, maybe from the second half or so. So we have to put ourselves in a frame of mind to take advantage of that fact. But once again, it's we the people who have to take advantage of it, because I don't think the government will do anything to put the common person in a position to benefit. It will benefit the cabal, it will benefit the few, but what we need as a people is to put our farmers to get to do agro-tourism, is to put our small hotel owners to get to improve themselves, to use our CBI resources to be able to get our small hoteliers to improve their operations, so that this airport can become a great asset to them. Now, let me stop with just one more thing, talk about the fiscal and the debt situation. Our debt is going up once again. Our fiscal deficit is huge and rising. It was 20%, 16% of GDP, overall deficit last year. I expect it to be maybe the same size this year. Debt rose to 117% of GDP at the end of last year. By the end of this year, it might be maybe close to 130, 140%. That is very, very high unsustainable debt. St. Kitts debt level is less than 60%, less than 40%. You know why? I think, yeah, less than 60% for sure. Maybe around central government, maybe around 45% for St. Kitts. Total public debt is maybe around 55% for St. Kitts. I say St. Kitts because St. Kitts is a CBI country. What has St. Kitts done? They have applied those CBI resources to their situation. They have brought down the debt. They have used the CBI in other creative ways to grow the economy. What has Dominica done? What have we seen in Dominica? St. Kitts was able to use their CBI resources to provide stimulus packages to their people, substantive stimulus packages, that the country is going through the pandemic fairly well, and they'll come out of it looking good. They'll come out of it stronger. What did Dominica do? Very little. I mean, mismanage the resources, 1 point something million unaccounted for, and high debt, 117%, maybe 140% by the end. When you're at 140% debt, you know that is extremely high unsustainable debt. So what we saw in 2020 seemed to continue in 2021, resulting in bad or deficits in fiscal government operation, the inability to use, or they did not use the CBI to cushion the economy and cushion the fiscal in an effective way. So we are seeing high debt, and Dominica going into a very dangerous situation. And the banking situation, the non-performing loans remained high, but it did not deteriorate. There was a slight improvement, so that's a good thing. But it's still fairly too high. So all in all, in 2021, our situation did not improve. Our situation remained subdued. Our economy remained weak, and we have not repositioned, with the exception of having the AA flight, we have not repositioned our economy to emerge out of the pandemic a much stronger country. Come 2022, if the pandemic is all behind us, Dominica will be in one of the weakest positions compared to the other countries which have prepared themselves to take advantage of this. So let me stop with that and give others the floor. Back to you, Sheridan.
Yes, and thanks a lot for that that initial contribution there, as usual, Kent. Very, very good and to the point. I mean, and people, as you speak and you raise those issues, I'm pretty sure that people who are listening are beginning to say, yes, I remember that, and yes, I can feel this. Yes, I can see the impact it has had on me. Yes, I can see the fact that there's been a largesse of a lot of cash flow from the CBI passport sales, but I mean, the contractors, as you said, are not feeling the impact of that. The local contractors, we see the truckers, the heavy equipment operators and owners are complaining. If the work is not reaching them, they still can't pay their loans, they still can't buy more equipment, take advantage. And then, of course, we see the no-bid contracts. All the contracts go into one person, right? And no bidding at all. We heard so many difficulties in the Procurement Act, and we saw a new act that was passed in Parliament recently. But we hear the contractors and the Builders and Contractors Association saying that that new act is a regression. It is not progress on what was there before, because it is not enabling them in any way. It's not going to get more work their way. As a matter of fact, they're saying it might legitimize some of the things that the government was doing that were wrong. So these are all issues that have to be considered. And going into 2022, obviously, Dominicans everywhere, whatever sector you are in, I mean, you're interested in the national good, you're interested in everybody doing well. So you want to make sure, come out and speak the truth to the power and say, listen, we're not going in the right direction. Look at St. Kitts, look at Antigua, look at Barbados, look at St. Lucia. They're doing something that we're not doing, obviously. That is why their statistics are not only the statistics are better than ours, but the quality of life and the living standards of many of their people are better than that of ours. There are too many people who are still so very poor in Dominica. And so we have too much of that. And nobody's really talking about generating wealth for the people, by the people. And how is that happening? And there's so much money in circulation coming from the CBI, and yet our young people, they're not really seeing how they're going to get wealthy or have a really decent living standard, a quality of life. I think that is very important, because that is what it's all about. Growth and development, all of that has to impact the lives of the people. Yes, there's been some housing, yes, but many of the people who are in those houses can't even afford to repair them, can't even afford maybe to pay the insurance for them. They need to have employment, they need to have revenue so that they can take care of their own living expenses. So I just want to go over to Marcus Kent, as you've given us some of your thoughts there already, and I know you'll come back later and give us some more. But Marcus, I want to go to you because I know you've been calling, and that is why I say the people's voice is important. You're one of the people who has been calling constantly and raising your issues and making your observations. I want to give you a chance now to raise some of the issues which you consider the key issues for you in 2021, where you saw maybe we did right, where maybe we're going wrong, what you would like to see us improve on, what you would like to see us stop doing because it's not working, because the people are not benefiting from it. Marcus, let me go over to you.
Well, Sheridan, thank you and good evening to everyone in Dominica and anywhere in the world they can hear the voice of Q. First, I always want to give thanks to the Most High for giving you, me, and the others the opportunity to be here for Dominica because I would start out by saying I sanction everything Mr. Vital said. And those are some of the issues that I think is necessary for Dominica to get straight, for the country to move forward. When you have a government leading from the back, all you're going to get is what we are getting now. And the people must realize that. Don't look for your little handouts because your handouts is only going to last today till tomorrow, hand to mouth, and tomorrow you're back where you started from. What I'd like to say most of all, from what I've seen, and I would like to mention one of the parliamentary parliamentary members, Mr. Austri, who uttered the words earlier this year that Dominica is always in the back. We in the back. You know, why are we behind? The reason why we are behind, we are not aggressively trying to build a country as the people in Grenada, in St. Lucia, in St. Kitts are trying to build the nation. All these countries are named for a certain reason. They have a CBI program. Mr. Vital spoke about tourism. Last week, I read an article. The two leading countries in the Caribbean who gets the most tourism leading the way, Jamaica and Aruba. And I must tell you, Jamaica just don't get tourism because Jamaica nice man and it irie and his weed, ganja and reggae music. Jamaica does the work. Jamaica has programs to train people in hospitality. It's a business and they treat it like a business and they train people to do the business of tourism. We must understand these things. We just don't build a hotel and we have a nice, green, vibrant country, a lot of water and all these things, and people are very kind and not, that is not a product. You must build a product, you must make it attractive, you must advertise it, you must market it, and put it on the front burner, make it visible where a person sees it and it piques their interest. Number two, the socio-economic problem in the country we face, the lack of our industries that we have lost. Mr. Vital stated again. I remember when Canefield had all the little business people in that factory area. And I thought that was great because when time I visited Dominica, I went by Benjo Simos, a man making Simos. And in the United States, I'm seeing it from Trinidad, I'm seeing it from Jamaica, and I could buy it. But when I taste Benjo Simos, let me tell you something. Because I'm the person, when I buy something, I like good flavor. I don't go just buy something just to say I have it. I want something that is good. If it's not good, because I'm very concerned about what I eat, how I eat. I just don't eat every and anything. Benjo has the best cinnamon that I've ever tasted, coming from a factory and mass produced. Take it from me, I'll tell you that. The guy's stuff is good, right? Now, when we have this kind of money that we generate from passports, and the money is not trickling down to the business district the native people. You have a place like Kipinski. Granted, good. Yes, you could have changed, but you taking bread from your own people, man. And you cannot tell me that when the people complain about lack of good governance, you have an issue with that. These are the things that I have an issue with. When people criticize the government, they criticize the government for good reason. And the government should listen to the citizenry and make improvements on their livelihood. That's why you vote a government in. You put a government in power to make your life better, not make it worse. If that's the case, you don't need a government. You need a government like the one in St. Kitts, who is led by an accountant. This is why St. Kitts is so progressive and so far ahead. That gentleman looked at what Denzel was doing, and once he took over, he turned things around. He put things in perspective to work for the Kittitian. He put it for the people because it's the people's resources. We have man like Dr. Dangerben. We have a lot of great people out there. The resources of Dominica is not only its water or its beauty. The resources of Dominica is its people. One of the greatest resources. And I will tell you, when I look around, I read, I look on YouTube, I'm on the internet a lot, and I don't go for the kind of Facebook gossip type stories. I read things that educate me, things that inform me on a different level. There are many Dominicans out there all over the world doing great things. Just this morning, I heard the scientist Marvel. Okay, you have the Dr. Swinburne coming on. You have George Andre, and there are many more like these. If you read and you seek information, it comes to you. Because people often say, if you want something that bad, you could find it. So this is what I do. I try not waste my time on loose and negative type stuff. So I try to educate myself. This is why I'm so adamant about Dominica moving forward, because I love the country. But when you have people who are in charge to take care of your business, and they seems to just neglect the first and most important thing is its people and its people's livelihood. But Sheridan, let me tell you something. You see, Grenada has taken a step to mass produce, to what you call farm soursop. Soursop is a big product now. This past year, Grenada exported about $3 million worth of soursop, US dollars coming into Grenada. Grenada is turning things up. Even Antigua was reading an article for agriculture. Agriculture has never been a big thing for Antigua, but they're making a go at it. You see, these are the things I'm looking at our brothers and sisters throughout the region. And when you look at home in Dominica, these things are non-existent. Farmers been crying for feeder roads. No feeder road. The government has put its hands on a lot of money. You have all these things coming in, and you have no investment in your people. There are certain things I hear people say. Let me tell you, I've often hear people say, well, we can't wait on the government to do everything. And you are right. But I will tell you one thing. The United States government has what they call a commerce department. You know what the United States government commerce department does? It goes out and look for business for its business people, the big factories, the farmers, the whoever, whatever your business is. You get linked up with the commerce department, and if you could produce and put it out there, they put them out there. They put the energy into building America. America is not great because America is just a big country with a lot of people. They do the work. If you notice what I'm trying to tell you, the foundation of my discussion is we must do the work. We can't just talk all this empty talk that the promises the government make to the people, and the people get hype and they clap and they way, and then we go back to sleep. We must do the work. Sheridan, the socio-economic future of Dominica does not look good at the rate we are going. Mr. Vital said it best because he's on the ground and he's telling you from an economic standpoint. My brother Thompson over there in South Sudan, but he's very, very well grounded in Dominica. And he tells us every Sunday he brings certain program that is very educational and the information is right on point. We're not talking about people who don't know how to make money work. We're talking about people who work with money. Mr. Vittel is an example. Thompson is an example. So these guys know. And why shouldn't the government use them? I don't know. But because of their political affiliation or their views, a government should not worry about a man's views, worry about his ability to make it work for the people. And I've listened to, before I close, I will tell you one great lawyer, Mr. What his name? The one who got O.J. Simpson off. Uh, I forget the gentleman's name, right? I had it at the tip of my tongue, but it will come.
Johnny Cochran. Johnny
Yeah?
Cochran.
I watched an interview with Johnny Cochran,
Yeah.
and he said once he went up against another real good adversary. And he said the guy gave him a hard time. He ultimately won his case. But the guy was so good, he decided to talk to the guy and have him work for him, to have him employed in his firm. And that was a white guy. He employed that man and had that man to work with him because of the man's ability, not because of his views. He's trying to be the best of the best. So to be the best of the best, you must hire the best and stop being so personal and petty. And this is where we need to stop this kind of stuff in Dominica. And ultimately, if we're going to have a good financial situation in Dominica, we need some people who handle finance, not a guy who studied psychology or whatever his field of study was. That is not your forte. Hire somebody who knows that, and let us move forward. Let's move the country forward. That's basically where I'm at for this opening salvo here. Thank you.
Right, and thanks a lot for that. And I've listened to you over the past 12 months, Marcus, and your contributions have always been very valuable. I've listened to you talk, for example, about the loss of Ross. And that is something that has been very painful to many Dominicans, especially to the people of Portsmouth. But because Ross contributed such a large portion of our GDP, it impacted everybody in Dominica. Because the cash flow that was lost from Ross, obviously, was a big loss to the economy. And I've also listened to you over the months and probably a couple of years talking about our diplomats. I mean, some of the people that we have been appointing as our foreign diplomats or ambassadors. And I've heard you lamenting that too many of them are ending up in jail.
Yes.
Why are we appointing these diplomats as ambassadors who are ending up in jail? I mean, and nobody knows why they're being appointed, what it is that they're doing for Dominica, but all we find out, and we only find that out at a point of time when they come in confrontation with the law. And
Yes,
so
yes.
these are some of the things that I've heard you talk about. I mean, you've lamented about some of those things for a very long time, and I believe with good reason. You see, so and you also have been talking about the fact that we have not been making enough use of our expertise that is in the diaspora and,
Yes.
and our expertise that is also in Dominica. We have a lot of expertise in Dominica which we are not utilizing to the fullest. We're not allowing them to self-actualize, really put to effect the real knowledge that they have, what they have to offer, the full capacity that they have to offer to Dominica. So you always speak about people like Dr. Dale Dangleben and Dr. Christian and many of these other folks. In fact, it is really truly a loss for our country that so many of our experts out there who are doing great things for America and the UK and European countries, and some of them are in the Caribbean region as well. And yet we're not making use of them to grow and develop our own country. And so these are some of the things, and I believe you're also concerned about what was revealed in the Panama Papers. I believe, Marcus, and I know you will come back and talk about those things And I know you've always talked about these no-bid contracts, and too many of these no-bid contracts, and they're not going to the locals. Locals are not benefiting, and the money is not staying in the country. So these are some of the things I believe when you come back, you'll be able to reflect on. But as I go to Alvin Thomas, Alvin has been hearing us in Dominica boasting that we are we're going to be the most the first uh, resilient and sustainable country in the world. We're going to be the first. I'm not sure we can be the first because there's probably countries who are first ahead of us already, but we've been talking about that quite a bit. And I know there's been projects, or maybe World Bank funded projects that try to assist us with those things. The studies have been done, reports have been produced, recommendations have been made. We know that CREED was established, Alvin, as a result of one of those initiatives. Alvin, I really hope that you can tell us a little bit more about that because you know this whole question of, we call ourselves the nature island of the Caribbean, and with good reason. But I mean, we still have to take care of our natural resources. We must take care of our rivers. We must take care of our soil. We must take care of our water. We must take care of our natural heritage, our culture. And so if we don't create industries of all those natural assets, we don't add value to them, or soil into our agriculture, agribusiness. You notice that Marcus was complaining. We've lost our manufacturing sector. That is gone, you know. And so you're saying if we don't take care of that, we're going to have more losses of those sectors. They will disappear. And next thing you know, what is going to happen to our locals? We saw what happened to our local distributive trades, all our little stores around Roseau. Most of them have gone over and now they're occupied by Chinese entrepreneurs, right? So this is a problem. I mean, we know the small business sector is the backbone of any economy. We've seen people like Suki and H. Charles and some of these people. These are the backbone of our economy. If we do not encourage them and all of these young people who are there now, if we don't build their enterprise, because these people are entrepreneurial. A lot of these young people, they have skills, they want to do stuff, they have ideas. But again, uh, Ken spoke about our banking system. Question of our debt GDP ratios. He talked about our bad debts in the banking system. He spoke about those things. But then you see, the banking system sometimes probably is not fully ready to embrace the new types of businesses some of our young people want to engage in. It's certainly not ready to embrace our cultural industries because we hear musicians and producers and entertainers say too often that they go to the banks, but the banks cannot help them because it's not part of their regime of things that they do, and they're not sure how to deal with it, right? But then these young people, they don't have that kind of collateral. They don't have all those things that are needed in a normal business. And so there has to be some creative ways of doing this. But Alvin, let us go back. The reason I'm mentioning that before I come to you is because all of what, when we talk about sustainability and resilience, you cannot have a resilient and sustainable country unless you have a resilient, sustainable people. Because the people that make up the country, why are we doing all of this for people? We're not doing it because of the land. We're doing all of this must work for the people. And so if the people are not resilient, if they cannot survive, it's not working. So let us talk about what it is that these people are trying to do to help us to ensure that we could be sustainable and resilient. Let me go over to you now, Alvin.
All right, thank you, Sheridan, and let me say good evening to our many listeners this evening, at home and abroad, and to again thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I trust that those of us in Dominica had a wonderful Christmas, peaceful, joyous Christmas, notwithstanding the challenges posed by COVID, the pandemic, as well as the economic challenges. I would hope that Dominicans, as we always say, I know that for a fact, we are resilient people. No matter where we go, as a people, we are. In terms of how we apply that might be a different story as far as it relates back home. But you go anywhere part of the world and you go to a business place and the owner of the business or the employer will tell you some of the best employees are folks from the Caribbean and in particular maybe Dominica as well. So I want to say to the Dominican people that hold on and trust that 2022 will be a much more rewarding and successful year for us Dominicans. As far as those of us in the diaspora, as I always say, we have a very keen interest in what's taking place back home. Sheridan, that the Israeli government, or rather Israel as a people, have one of the most thriving and best diaspora grouping, if you may call it so, and they contribute tremendously to their country back home. You take you call this place St. Patrick's. St. Patrick Day is a big activity in America. And who are they? Ireland, another country that uses its people in the diaspora, the islands, to the extent that in America they observe St. Patrick's Day, which is an Irish tradition. So I'm saying so to say that those of us in the diaspora have a tremendous responsibility and an obligation to contribute towards the development of the country. We may not be there physically, but I think in terms of our own economic support that we provide, in terms of our moral support that we provide, in terms of our intellectual support that we provide, we are part of that integral part of the development of Dominica. So I'm saying so because most of the times you hear comments being made, oh, these guys are out here in Atlanta, in New York, or in thing, and we're on the ground and they don't know, and why should they be? And I'm saying so to say that that certainly should not be the case. Let me say to our listeners tonight, those at home and abroad, I would like to contribute to that discussion against the background or to preface and to use as what I should say, to use as a basis for the dialogue and the discussion, two documents. And one of this document that I'm going to reference to extensively during our discussion as time permits is what was called a document prepared by the government of Dominica, the Commonwealth of Dominica. It's about a 130-page document, and it's called Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan, 2020 to 2030. Very extensive document. Captures and covers a number of areas: tourism, agriculture, small business, development, you name it. So that is one document. The other document I would be referring to is the budget address, the Dominica budget 2021-2022 budget document. And that document is captioned building on our past, solidifying our present, securing our future. And the reason why I'm using those two documents, Sheridan, is to be able to bring some perspective to the discussion. So it's not just a question of how we think at the top of our head just saying things, but to relate what's contained in this document in terms as to how we have progressed, how we have done the last year, how we intend to go into the new year 2022 and beyond. Because those documents captures in a way, and I would hope that these documents are still very alive. They're working documents. Obviously there will be tweaks as we go along. This is what documents are like. But in general, the document captures in a very pragmatic and comprehensive way how we intend to move forward as a people. The one that is referred to as the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan 2020-2030 has 5 areas on the front cover of the document. It speaks of peace, which we all want. The world wants peace. Dominica needs peace. And having said that, we are having this discussion tonight on the eve of the passing of Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a man of peace, a man of justice, a man of, this was the first man in South Africa from the clergy who stood up against apartheid. Even when governments were scared, even when business sectors were scared, even when politicians were scared, this is the man of the cloth who said, no, this thing cannot continue. And he went to the forefront and he fought that injustice. And of course, others follow on board. The rest is history. I'm saying so again to say that our civil societies in Dominica, our persons in civil society, the church, the business, the trade unions have an obligation. Desmond Tutu came up against all odds in South Africa, and he fought that terrible regime then. May his soul rest in peace. But going back to the document that I referenced, the document speaks of peace, speaks of planet, speaks of prosperity, partnership, and people. The 5 P's: peace, planet, prosperity, partnership, and people. That's the document. Incidentally, and that have come up several times in our discussion, Dominica is only 7 years away from observing our 50th year as a nation, as an independent nation. 7 years. And this document that I'm referencing now, that Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan 2020-2030, is just 9 years thereabout out there. So you can see the dovetailing of where we are and where we should be as a 50-year-old mature, one would say, nation. So I'm trying to give this parallel. As it relates to this creed document, which I will make some reference to in a minute, we have on our statute book now as we speak, Act number 16 of 2018, and it's called the Climate Resilience Act. It's an act of parliament. On previous discussions we've had, we spoke about the Constitution and acts of parliaments and documents emanating from the Constitution through legislation in Parliament. We can't lose sight of those things, Sheridan, as a people, as a country. I keep saying that, and you may hear it ad nauseum from me. The JCI Creed has a line which says government should be of laws rather than of men. Government should be of laws rather than of men. So this is what governs a society. That's what governs a democracy. So when we go ahead and we pass those legislations, like we did in that case, Act 16 of 2018, it's called the Climate Resilience Act. And let me just, for the benefit of our listeners, the object of the act. The object of this act are, 1A, to promote the swift and cost-effective recovery of Dominica from climate-related disaster. Of course, as our discussion evolves tonight, the whole question of climate change is going to come into the discussion, a major, major, major area. B, to ensure that any physical and other infrastructure damage or destroyed during a climate-related disaster is reconstructed or restored to a state that is better than its state before the occurrence of that disaster. C, to ensure that Dominica will be more resilient to natural hazards and better able to respond to climate-related disasters. And D, to assist the public and private sector and civil society to be better equipped to manage and recover from climate-related disasters. And of course, the act goes on to speak about the appointment of a board and what the function of that board should be and what the function of creed should be and all of that. As I said, this is a piece of legislation that should govern how we operate as a country, as a government, as a people moving forward. In terms of that actual document creed, in April of 2020, the Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt carried And I'm going to quote briefly from his foreword to the document. He says there, realizing that the resolve to rebuild must be fueled, by a strategy, a plan, and the requisite resources, my government has spared no effort to turn our vision into action. In June of 2018, we crafted and endorsed the National Resilience Development Strategy, NRDS acronym for short, Dominica 2030. In December 2018, Parliament unanimously passed the Climate Resilient Act, a groundbreaking legislation that established a Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica, CRED, to fully operationalize the NRDS, the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan, CRRP, is now published. The CRRP sets forth targets, defines initiative that will take us from where we are at the beginning of 2020, that's just a year ago, to where we intend to be by 2030, and outlines it's required to achieve our objective in terms of our financial resources and strategic and operational partnership. And he goes on to say further, I cannot stress enough that the task of building a climate resilient Dominica must be all-inclusive, all hands on deck. As such, it is my sincere hope that as the private sector, civil society, and academia develop their own organizational plan for the coming years, due care and attention will be paid to the CRRP as the overall national development planning framework. I also encourage our educational institutions to dutifully examine the provision of both the NRDS and the CRRP for purposes of guiding students into career and professions which respond to the area of greatest national needs. These are words from the Prime Minister. So clearly, as you will appreciate, Sheridan, it touches on the whole question of development. And as we are in the process of analyzing where we are for 2021 and where we intend to go, that document speaks directly to some of those areas. So the question will remain, if some of those activities as contained in there were not achieved, either in 2020 or in 2021, then what happened? Why would they not achieve? And how are we going to ensure that come 2022, we're going to achieve some of these or what we have set ourselves for 2022? And it cannot just be a document just for the sake of a fancy document with fancy stuff in there and fancy words in there, as I will point out to you in a few minutes when I make specific reference to specific activity in the document, some of which should have been concluded by 2020, some of which should have been concluded in 2021, and some of which that are to be concluded by 2022. Of course, it goes into 2030. But there are some specific initiatives that ought to and should have been concluded in 2020 and 2021.
Let's get to them, Alvin. Let's get to them in the interest of time. Let's get to those because I think that's very important for us to get to them.
But let me just say one more thing, because one of the piece mentioned was people. And let me just, because at the end of the day, development must be geared towards people. Okay? It's not geared, it's not something nebulous. It's geared towards people, and I think Marcus put it out quite rightly. You vote a government in order to make your life better, to make it better for you in health, in education, housing, economy. And it's interesting in the document that some folks had certain views on resilience. Like you said earlier, it's a word that's been bandied about. Yeah, what a bus driver said. They're a couple, and I'm quoting again from the document. That's not my words. As a bus driver, I think we play a very important role, but somehow we are overlooked. We are the ones transporting the people from one place to the next. and there needs to be discussions with us. Unfortunately, we are not organized as a body or association, and that's a problem. That's a bus driver. Another experience shares the experience we had was not the best, and I can understand that because everybody was looking after themselves and family. I think the magnitude of what caused it, because with Erica, it was not so. Again, that is where the community group plays an important role in mobilizing the people together with the government agencies. In terms of 2020, you had what was referred to as a Community Emergency Readiness Initiative. And that was an initiative that had to be undertaken. And the target date for that was to have been completed in 2020. And the question that arises is, what has happened? Did we achieve that? Did it happen? You had another initiative. You had for 2020, you had what is called a venture capital investment in women in agriculture. And that delivery was shown as 2020. It says that the concept was there are several high-impact venture capital and venture opportunity. One example, Lady Agri, is the bridge between investment financing and donor community advance at technical companies and services provided and women agri entrepreneurs in the ACP country. Lady Agri says Dominica has a strategic opportunity about acting as a partner in Dominica. That was something that had to be undertaken in 2020. We also had what they refer to there as innovative approach to insurance. Again, delivery, time to deliver 2020. That's a whole year ago. We also had Resilient Dominica Physical Plan, Infrastructure Risk Condition. The delivery on that was supposed to be in the third quarter of 2020. Determine infrastructure condition and the risk hazard that impact its ability to meet its intended use. 2020, Resilient Dominica Physical Plan, Hydrological Survey and Flood Landslide Risk Mitigation Plan. And all of those two have some cost attached to that. That one was a $3.55 million. Time of delivery, third quarter of 2020. You had Resilient Dominica Physical Plan, Sector Master Plan, Housing Utility, Port, Road, Bridges, Drainage, School, Health Center, Shelter Cost. The water and electricity sector are in the process of preparing plans. Road bridges have a previous sector plan that requires updating with a focus on resilience. Plan for various sectors will therefore be completed during the period up to the first quarter of 2021. So these are just some of the areas that this document addresses. Let me just share with you another area.
One of the things I might want to do, Alvin, you see, because the reason why I introduced you and the subject the way I did, I want us to relate it to what is going on, what happened in 2020, 2019, 2020, and what did not happen, how the people's lives were not really improved. In other words, all of those things, as you say, were supposed to improve people's lives, impact people's lives, whether it's the bus operators, bus owners, bus drivers, or truck operators, or equipment operators, or farmers, or manufacturers, everybody, the young people, the young entrepreneurs, the musicians, the entertainment industry. The thing is that we're not hearing them saying that they've been impacted positively, and they're not saying that they're doing well. We hear everybody complain that they're not doing well. And I want Kent to come back on that, because when you look at the economy and you look at the players in the economy, people in the economy. So I'll let you conclude what you were going to do there, Alvin, and then I'll go to Ken for us to then examine all of that in the context of, because we say we are a nature island, right? And we're looking to be the first sustainable and resilient country in the world. If this is the plan, let us see how well we're doing, how it has impacted people's lives.
Exactly. And let me just end on an area. There are several other areas I'll touch on, but let me just end on that area. There's an area in there that's referred to as Kalinago Territory Development Strategy, our indigenous people. The Kalinago Territory has long suffered from high unemployment and poverty. According to the 2009 Country Poverty Assessment Report 2009, nearly 50% were poor. 50% were poor. And 2011 census unemployment in age group varied from 20% age 25 to 29 to 55% age 15 to 19. Hurricane Maria offset further social and environmental impact on an already vulnerable population. And it goes on to say, as part of this development plan, as I'm saying, preparation by first quarter of 2020, that was last year, and implementation of a 10-year Kalinago Territory Development Plan. So do we have a Kalinago Territory Development Plan? Did that took place the first quarter of 2020, and where are we now a whole year from there? Unemployment reduced to 30% by 2025. So that's just 3 years ago. They want 3 years from now to reduce unemployment, and 15% by 2030, which is the end of the plan. Establishment of a Kalinago Development Fund with disbursement of $3 million by 2025 and $10 million by 2030. Number of resilient houses increased by 150 by 2025 and 300, Kalinago we're talking about, by 2030. Emergency shelter capacity of 200 in 2022, which is next year, and by 500 in 2030. And 40% of Kalinago farmers applying climate resilient agriculture practices by 2025. So quite involved, quite entailed. And the question remains, like you just asked, has any of that been implemented, and how has it impacted the Kalinago people? And if it has not been implemented, what were the constraints? I know a lot of folks throw their hand up in the air and say pandemic, but one of the things we have to understand, and I think Ken pointed out quite clearly, St. Kitts is going through a pandemic. Guess what? St. Kitts have 85% herd immunity. That tells you the number of persons in St. Kitts that have taken the vaccine. St. Kitts GDP, the last time I checked, was over 17,000 GDP per capita, US that is. They have the pandemic too. So while we can throw our hands up and say, well, you know, we had pandemic, we had this, the question remains that if you don't have a vision, then the country, the people perish. Two, if you have a vision and then you have a plan, but the plan is not executed, then it comes to the same thing, that the people perish. So the bottom line is, we got to use that as a guide. This is what they said and they committed to doing. And we have to hold their feet to the fire. The private sector, civil society, who are part of that dialogue, have to ask, tell me, where are we on that plan? How did we manage for 2021? And how do we intend to proceed come 2022 and there beyond? And as I said, there is an act of parliament that empowers the players or whoever is responsible to ensure that those activities are executed. I can't hear you, Sheridan.
Sheridan, your mic's off.
Yeah, sorry about that. My mic was muted. Alvin, but as I go over to Kent, I want you to remind me again and remind our listeners, because many of our listeners may have missed what you were quoting from. The document that you were quoting from, give us the name of it again, because you said it is a government of Dominica document, and all of what you quoted from there, all of those benchmarks that were set to accomplish all of those things, are in fact in that government document. I need
Yes,
you to give us
it
the
is. It
again.
is a government of the Commonwealth of Dominica document. It's on the cover of the document has what I refer to as the 5 P's: peace, planet, prosperity, partnership, people. The title of the document is called the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan 2020 to 2030. That's the document. It's an existing document. It's a live document. It's supposed to be a working document. There are targets in there. There are activities in there. And as I said, it covers the whole gamut of development: people, education, sports, health, housing, agriculture, tourism, you name it, it's in the document. And each, as I said, each area has certain targets and timelines. 2021, what needs to be done? 2022, 2020. It's all in the document.
Alvin,
So we
I
have
don't know.
used that as a basis for our discussion.
I don't know what sort of funding, external funding, whether there was World Bank funding or any funding associated with that document, but I imagine that we can always do some work to find out, because once you have a document like that, very often you get some international agency might say, okay, we refer to fund that, because we know that CREED was established, one of the institutional established to sort of oversee this type of thing was CREED. And I know that maybe Kent will help us with some of that. But Kent, as I go
Yep.
to you, if you recall that Alvin mentioned Israel and he mentioned the diaspora and how much work they do, how they mobilize to assist their homeland, big time, right? But then, as we recall, going back to some of our discussions, we always reference Singapore as one of those countries that made such great use of its human resources to build from some little country that was insignificant to some very significant, a very good business model has been extremely successful, generate a lot of wealth. So again, and then we look at Creed, we look at its document that it's talking about, all these plans were there. And I don't know how you see how some of those you have translated into improving the life and the living standard and the quality of life of the people of Dominica. As I said, I've been mentioned the people in the Kalinago territory. It seems to me that what he's saying is that we have not seen the impact on those people, whether it's in their agriculture, in their housing, or in their economy, in their art and craft, or whatever it is the way of life is. And if we extend it to the rest of the country, have we seen it in terms of our contractors, in terms of our tour operators, in terms of our tourism people? We still hear our hotel occupancy rate is very low. We still hear our visitor expenditure is extremely low for those people that come. So give us a little bit more on some of those things that you wanted to talk about with respect to the economy and our, especially in the largesse that we have of CBI cash flows, and then how all of that impacted all of the things that we're talking about, the people in our economy. Yeah, Kent.
Right. Good. Thanks again. Now, the diaspora could be one of the greatest tools that we have to develop our countries. And as Alvin said, as you mentioned, many countries have used their people living abroad effectively. Israel is a clear example. India is another one. And we possibly have more Dominicans living out of Dominica than those living in Dominica. As a matter of fact, many of the Dominicans who live out of Dominica, the reason why they're out is because in the first place, they went to further their education. So we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have scientists, we have all kinds of skills in the diaspora. Of course, there are some who got the green cards and so on, but many, some of our best minds, in other words, what I'm saying is that some of our strongest minds and best minds are actually out there. What other countries have done, they have tapped into that, either tapping into those ideas for national development or tapping into the resources that those persons have gotten, investments. There are many, for instance, very wealthy Israelis all over the world, And that has contributed tremendously to the development that you saw in Israel, that we saw in Israel over the last few years. There, I mean, I will have to do a survey, but I'm sure there are Dominicans if we pull them together. And but you know why Israelis invested in Israel? Because there was good governance in Israel, right? Now that is what is lacking in Dominica. I believe we have very good, great Dominicans out there who are eager to help and who will help if there's a government that can get it act together, that can organize, that can manage well and manage with accountability and honesty and integrity. That is one of the greatest resources we have. People, as Maka said, our people, and many of them reside overseas and they want to help, but they won't lift a finger because it's going to be a waste. Not only will they not lift a finger because it's going to be a waste, the current government that we have do not want to engage them because they are threatened. They are threatened by people who would act with intelligence. They are threatened by people who would act with integrity. So somehow it's not in their interest to bring people who can think independently, who are not coming in because they need a bread from you, because these Dominicans, they're doing well. Many of them are doing well. So if they come in, it's because they will come in to think independently. And the kind of government that we have, that's not what they want. They want to be able to maintain their political power. They want to be able to maintain power at any cost. And bringing in capable, intelligent Dominicans from overseas undermines that. And therefore, they won't do it. They will bring in people who will come to help them to vote, to win the election, to steal the elections, but they wouldn't bring in the skills. Because when you bring in those people with independent thinking and they can begin to show the way, we'll have a more independent Dominica. And the kinds of bad governance that we see, there would be a check on this. They won't allow that to happen. So that's part. But that is what any new government coming into power, we have to look at our diaspora. We have to understand that that's one of our greatest resources. And we have got to organize in such a way that we allow them to contribute in whichever way, whether it's through ideas, whether it's through investments, whether it's through tourism, because many want to come home, many want to enjoy the holidays and the festivities. They could build homes that could be used for tourism, that they can use whenever they're here. I mean, there are so many avenues in which we can build Dominica. We should see Dominica as not just those of us here, but aspire to build a Dominica that's us here and those everywhere. But that's a powerful thing. But to go back a little bit to what Alvin was talking about, and Alvin, you rightly knocked on some of the reasons why we're not seeing many of the things you have said. I have not followed it closely. I've read those documents. I would tell you, I've read some of those documents, if not all of them, and they're well written. I could give you that. They are well written documents. Maybe there are a few things I would change here and there, but they're well written. Now, the excuse that this government will give you is COVID, because obviously that's the excuse they'll give you. And you have to give them some credit, maybe for the first year, COVID, they had to turn their attention to controlling, the spread of the pandemic, to putting in the health system in order and so on. So maybe you could give them some credit for that. But the truth is, this document chances are it was written, first of all, to appease the investors. Because remember after the hurricane, that they had bragged about the assistance that they would be receiving. But many of these governments are not just going to give you assistance and let you manage it whichever way you wish, especially where your country have had a reputation. And Dominica have not had a good reputation for governance. So many of them insisted that there had to be a creed, for instance. Creed wasn't Dominica's idea, Creed was required of Dominica, because they knew that our systems, why would you require a creed if your current government system functions well? If your implementation system works well, there's no need for creed. But it was a requirement from this government that you had a creed, and it was a requirement or part of what needed to be done to produce a nice document that the creed could run with. But so the document was done, not that the government seriously intended to do those things, but they had to write some nice things in there. And if they intended to do them seriously, the fact is we know the truth. The truth is this government's first priority is not doing things that will benefit the country. Their first priority would be to manage the country and manage the country's resources in a way that benefit a few. We know that from experience. So yes, it's a good document, but the intention was never to manage, so they would do that to put out there to the donors so the monies could come in. And by the way, the monies have not come in. And I had wondered about that before. Nobody's going to give you those kinds of monies if they had no confidence in your governance. And from what I had already known, when they were bragging about all of these resources coming in and they were preparing this document to receive those resources, there were people in the corridors of the UN saying, yeah, in front of you on paper, we will pledge, but we're not going to give you this because unless you prove to us that you can manage it well. And Dominica has never proven that it can manage resources. So I could tell you all of these resources they were hoping for. You see, they're quiet on it. They have not said anything on it. Those resources have not come in. And if those resources had come in, some of these projects that on the intentions that they had would have been done, but they were not done because resources did not come in. And the resources that came in, like the CBI resources, were misappropriated and mismanaged. So a big part of the reason why those things have not been done is because the government, first of all, could not get the resources that were promised. And secondly, the resources that we had, which were sufficient. We had sufficient resources of our own, the CBI resources, to do those things. We did. They could have been done. So no COVID excuse. The resources would have been there. If they were not mismanaged, all of these things could have been done. But as I said, we do not have a government that manage in the interest of the people. They fool the people. Every budget I read is a good budget. And when I say good budget, it sounds good. They never come through seriously. So they are in the business of putting forward good documents, but not following through. So what we have is bad implementation system. No, this is not unique to Dominica. There are many governments in the Caribbean, they are not as corrupt as Dominica's government. But in terms of putting forward good plans, that's something many countries do. But what is lacking in many countries is that we often do not have the systems, proper implementation systems. We are beginning to say those things in the documents. We are beginning to say, yes, we need proper implementation systems. We are beginning to call for the creeds and all of that. But somehow we are not moving the next step to do the things we're supposed to do. Now, in Dominica's case, they did move to the next step in terms of creed, and they created a creed. But don't forget what happened some time ago. I think it was this year or late last year, where we had the manager of Creed resigning or not renewing his contract, whichever one. I believe he was resigning. Now, why did that happen? You know why it happened? Because these managers, these high-paid managers, professional people, realized that Creed was just a fast, was just something to appease the investors. It wasn't something Dominica really wanted, because they wanted to be able to manage the resources whichever way they wanted to. And remember, that's what governments were concerned about. That's what foreign governments were concerned about. If we give you that money, will you manage it well? Well, that is exactly what the managers of Creed experienced. The interference, when they were to make recommendations, the political considerations, and all of these things frustrated. Of course, nobody said that in public, but we know is the frustration that they went through that led to they walking out. And of course, we know what they have done since then. They have put in place managers who are politically aligned to the government. So Creed is not going to go anywhere. And of course, the monies are not coming in, have not been coming in. And if anything, they have an opportunity to use the CBI, but we know what would be their first choice with using the CBI, use it for their benefit. So these are some of the difficulties that we have had. So what we need to turn things around is the government to just simply stop looking after their own interests and begin to look at the country seriously. Begin to use the very skill that we have out in the diaspora and in Dominica. Begin to put the right people in the right places. Begin to use the CBI resources to fund some of the things that we ought to be funding. Begin to do what Send Kids do. But honestly, I do not hold my breath when it comes to this government. I do not think they are capable of doing what we said. Corruption is so ingrained in them. Working for their own interests and their own egos is so ingrained in them. I cannot see this government doing the obvious, the right thing, putting in the right implementation systems, being above board and transparent, fixing the procurement rules. As a matter of fact, what they will do is the reverse. Rather than fixing the procurement rules, they would make it worse. They would do it in such a way to justify and to entrench their corrupt behavior. It's the same thing we saw when they were attempting to change the electoral laws. So rather than changing the electoral laws in a way to improve or make elections free and fair, what they were doing instead, they were trying to change the electoral laws to justify bribery and cheating. That's what they were trying to do. So this government does seem to be capable of doing the right thing. When they do try to change laws, they try to change it to justify their corruption. The procurement rules is just another example of it. So the truth is, I just don't think we have a government that's capable. I honestly don't know how else to say. Things can be done to turn things around, but can they come to the point where they realize, boy, yes. As a matter of fact, they know what needs to be done, but their priority is not that. Their priority is, how do I continue to be in charge? How do I continue to control? How do I continue to use public resources for my own benefit? That is the crux of the problem in Dominica. And where we have to get to as a people is a point to say, no, enough is enough. We are seeing how well St. Kitts is doing. We are seeing how well Antigua is doing. We are seeing how well Barbados is doing. That's not to say these countries can do better still, you know. But compared to how we are doing, as a people, we have to begin to say, we are seeing in other countries. Now, by the way, they are keeping people blind, because they are seeking to tell people Dominica is doing well. But the truth is, Dominica is not doing well, and they skew the statistics. As a matter of fact, when you understand the statistics, you'll understand that Dominica is not doing well. But they constantly seek to mislead the people. But we need to awaken the people. So when people realize what's going on, see what's going on in St. Kitts, man, with CBI, see how Antigua is using the CBI, see how St. Lucia is using the CBI resources. Tell me where in any of these countries monies were taken and placed in an account without the authorization from Parliament. Any of these countries that run CBI, Grenada also, they all seem to be well run compared to Dominica. So our people just have to awaken and realize, no, it's time to stop this. It's time for the government to do the right thing. And if the government won't do the right thing, the truth is the people have to arise and say, enough is enough. Resign, walk away. We cannot continue to facilitate a government that is managing badly, that is managing corruptly, that is cheating at the elections. But that is the crux of our problem compared to all the other Caribbean countries. We have a serious governance difficulty. That is why all of these things you mentioned, Alvin, they are not being done, because at the bottom of the day, we have a serious governance difficulties. Now, countries do sometimes have genuine reasons why they may have something in the plan. Because I've said it over and over again. You know, plans sometimes are a bit ambitious, and and then they don't all get done. Sometimes that's the nature of a plan. You might put a little more in it than you might actually get done. But in the case of this government, it goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond that. So this is the crux of the matter. But in the meantime, our people are suffering. Our people are suffering, as I said. I mean, you can look at the statistics, and the fact is sometimes they don't even publish the statistics, because the statistics are so much against them that I believe they understand the information and it's not released. But poverty in Dominica is very high. Now, if the figure, the last set of figures we had was 2000 what year was it? 14 or so. Anyway, but it was like a 28%, 29%. We haven't had a more recent figure. But the fact is, poverty is very high. And since that figure, we have had Maria, we have had COVID. Imagine what it is now. I mean, you meet people and their state, they can hardly, have free meals. There are people you meet that can hardly have free proper meals. There are people who are struggling in Dominica. And we can say it's the pandemic, but it happened before. It was in place already. The pandemic has made it real worse. Our unemployment is very high. We do not have very recent figures. The government tend to, if they have those figures, tend to hide them because the picture is not flattering to the government. So we do not get it. But unemployment is high, especially among the youth, extremely high. When you look at the real economy, you could see we are in a terrible situation, and it's going to get worse. Yes, if they do turn around and manage the CBI resources properly, it can be reversed. If they were to take the CBI resources and if the CBI were to continue, that is, after they have damaged it so badly, if we were to continue to be able to, with the CBI programs, if they were to take it, yes, do invest in the airport, but also invest in people, invest in our small hotels, invest in our farmers. There's something I am doing right here myself, agritourism and developing the product. It's something I want to take out to our farmers, agritourism. Why won't the government invest in something? So, and as a matter of fact, we will be putting it out to government. Allow some of us in the diaspora, allow some of us in Dominica to organize so that we could get some of the CBI passports to benefit the people because they are crying, they are bawling. So people, the economy is clearly not doing well by any stretch, anything. So what is keeping us? What is keeping the economy? So because they will always use the figures and they would say, oh, well, last year we grew by 2019 we grew by about 3% and so on. They will use those figures. But you have to go underneath that and see what is causing some of the growth. Some of that was driven by government finance construction. A lot of our activity in Dominica is driven by our diaspora, the gifts that they send to their people. Dominica has one of the highest rates of remittances in the Caribbean. It's as high as 7% of GDP or more, of people sending monies back home. That is what is helping to keep the economy afloat. It's also driven by a lot of illicit activity going on in Dominica, and that's a fact. The police know it, by the way. They know that there's a lot of illegal activity going on in our country. But when you look deep beneath, aside from these three things, government finance projects, which is run by CBI, the little that they do, the housing that they did, the little roads that they do, when you look past, thanks to our diaspora who send monies home to their people to pay light bills, to pay this and pay that, and when you look past the illegal activity, then what do you have in the economy? Weak agriculture. Farmers cannot sell. Tourism not off the ground, other than the few hotels that were being constructed, the few chosen ones who have these hotels. But even so, the industry hadn't taken off. We have a bright spot in terms of manufacturing, not bright spot in terms of exports yet, but bright spot in terms of we have so many young people. And you mentioned, thanks for mentioning that, Marcus. You mentioned, I mean, that's a great testimony. John would love to have heard that. I'm not sure if he's listening, of how Benjo Simas, that's one of the best tasting Simas that you ever. We do have manufacturers and people who want to produce coal pot soaps. We have people producing oils, and we have a bright spot there of people with ideas, chips and flour. And we have people with bright spots. We have some bright spots, but they are not moving at the pace that they can. They have access maybe to aid bank loan, but some of these businesses, the worst thing that they can do is become over leveraged with loans. You know, a small business rising with potential, and let's say 90% of the assets, loans, maybe they need some time to strengthen, to grow before they can even get opportunity to solidify themselves. They're owing the bank, and the bank comes knocking at the door, want to take the assets. But you have a CBI program. I mean, what a wasted opportunity. We had so much of that money that could be diverted towards people like Benjo Simas, those that have shown good promise, like some of the people producing the soaps and the wines, and then the teas. As for the teas, we have so many people producing some, well, let's not say so many people, but there are a few good people producing teas, and especially in this era with COVID. A lot of these teas can be promoted as healthy options, but they have no support. All they can do is go to the bank, and that's a tough thing. What they need is equity support. What they need is venture capital. What they need is better technical support. But we have a bright spark here, but even then we are not moving at the pace that we can go. So what do we do as a people? And I heard you, Marcus. We actually need government to help take those things forward. We need government to help organize the diaspora. Besides the CBI, another source of support for some of these businesses I just mentioned could be the diaspora. But you need a government to organize that. Now, when you do not have a government to organize it, you get nowhere, except that as a people, we have to say, you know something? Government or not, we know the government is in the better position. They have the resources, they have the taxes. They're the ones who should be doing it. But we cannot just stay and die. We cannot just stay and die. Some of us would have to organize to get it done. And that is where I am right now. And that is why, and many of you, let me just put a plug in here. Many of you have heard about NJAM. That is what NJAM is going to be all about. We have to save our country. We have to rise to the occasion. We have to get it done. We have to restore good governance, but we also have to assist our youth, assist our businesses, put things in place. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. This is something government should be doing if they want to do the right thing. And there is still opportunity for them to do it. Many of the ideas that they will hear, they can go ahead and do it. And that's a challenge to them. Let's see if they'll do it. Because the ideas we're going to float are ideas to support the people rather than to support a few.
Yes, Kent, great stuff there. And of course, NJAM, I think, still stands for National Joint Action Movement. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
And I believe that you have been recently elected as the chair of NJAM. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct. And we have our luncheon on the second. Sorry, on the 1st, January 1st.
Right. So I dare say that NJAM is in good hands.
Well, it's not in my hands only. It's many of us. I'm just the chairman, but
Well,
a lot of the good ideas come from the others.
well, I think the others had some very good ideas to make you the chairman. But here's the point I wanted to make, though. I mean, you know, and I'm going to go back to Marcus and Alvin momentarily, but you know, time has a way of running out on us. But I wanted to make the connection. I get back to you, Marcus, and to Alvin. You see, all of the things that Alvin said at first about this act and the whole question of resilience and sustainability. And then you see the way Kent came back and I asked him to put it in context and show how it impacted people's lives. And Kent showed very clearly that one of the problems is lack of an implementation plan, or ability to implement. And that is why I know Alvin wanted to talk about the budget process a little bit, because he wanted to say something about it, because we saw every budget, we see that we put so many projects out there and we don't accomplish many of them. Every time we put out these budget estimates and then we come back for supplementary appropriations that are so much, you know, almost 1/3 of what we had estimated that the thing would cost. Is that just inefficiency, or is it something, a deeper problem than that? I keep asking, and again, we want to reflect on the Director of Audit's report. The Director of Audit seems to be digging deep into those things and asking a lot of questions and looking for answers. So Alvin, when we come back to you and we talk about the budget, you will help us to look at some of those things. And then, of course, Kent, you came up with one or two suggestions. That is why we're here tonight. We've had many suggestions. Some of us may not have noticed some of the suggestions coming out to the way forward. But I mean, certainly looking at the St. Kitts model and the Antiguan solution is a good model to look at, you know, because they're obviously, when we come to look at the real statistics, we see that they're way ahead of us in Luxembourg. They have the same constraints that we have with COVID and all of those things. Some of them have it much worse than we do. But still, they seem to be managing and being able to give the people a double bubble in December, your public officers, every one of them, and then to give how many stimulus packages to their people. How is it that they're able to do this and we can't? Why is that? You know, so of course, I mean, some of the things that you're saying, like to fix the procurement rules, instead of fixing them, I'm hearing the people The contractors and builders saying we go in the opposite way around in the new legislation and the new regulations. And we're saying to fix the electoral laws and the campaign finance laws. We saw what Jamaica did, and their elections are much more stable now. Level playing field. And we saw Antigua happened, and Antigua is democracy, is a St. Kitts, all of these countries that have done the electoral reforms and the campaign finance reforms, we can see some more stability and the democracy is going more smoothly. Is that one of the reasons why we're falling behind in our economy? Because our democracy is not so transparent. The integrity may not be there. The institutions are being eroded, and the transparency and the accountability may not be there because we hear people asking questions in parliament which go unanswered. And then, so here's the thing, and then you talked about agrotourism. I mean, we have to go agrotourism, but we must do agriculture. We don't seem to want to really do agriculture in a serious way. I get Thompson Fontaine talk about initiative himself and Danny Logan and a few other people took some time ago and buying farmers stuff and exporting, and somebody in the government seemed to have taken umbrage with that. They had already done very well and they were looking to do a lot more. Shouldn't that be what we are doing, in fact, to making sure that we buy tell the farmers, listen, these are the products that we want you to put down in the ground. We'll buy everything that you produce because we're going to have all these agribusinesses. This raw material is not just going to be sold as fresh produce, but it's going to be throughput in industries, right? We're going to manufacture things, we're going to do agribusiness, add value and convert stuff that can be packaged and have shelf life and can be internationally competitive. That is what Jamaica is doing, Kent. All the countries are doing that. That is what we ought to do. In other words, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. We have the God-given natural resources. We have the water. We have the soil and so on. We have the human resource. Why not use it and do like Singapore and Israel? Working for our diaspora, bring the human resource to bear. Working for our local human resource. We have endless amount of that. Very qualified, experienced, and smart people in Dominica and outside. Use them the same way that these people out there can send $50 million a year into our economy as a contribution, remittances. They can probably do more if we allow them to do more in creative ways. You understand? All right. And then, of course, the recommendation for creative financing. Obviously, you cannot have the same kind of one size cannot fit all. So the kind of financing that you have for big business cannot be the same for small businesses and for young entrepreneurs, fledgling industries that you need to build to create the backbone of your economy, your agri-based industries. You have to have a different system of financing for them. All right? The level of risk is different. So I'm just saying all those things in terms of, well, you mentioned maybe venture capital. That is one way of doing it, matching credit funds and so on, matching grants, that kind of thing. So there's obviously a lot of creative things that we can do. And so I hope that we will, as we go along the next 2 nights, so we're going to be coming up more and more recommendations for the way forward. But I just wanted to alert Lambi, if he's hearing me, that we should take a couple of calls if we can from some people who may want to call us, Lambi. So if you're hearing me and you would like to give the folks the numbers, so before I go back to Marcus and before I go back to Alvin, who I know have a lot more to contribute, Lambi, let me go over to you for a minute and let's hear you when we go over to you. Give the folks the numbers and see if there are 1 or 2 people who want to make a couple of calls to engage with us in the conversation here tonight. Over to you, Lambi.
Thank you very much. The Global View and Q, the numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Let me run those numbers again. 449-3095, 3096, 3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624, and we're taking your calls right now.
Lambi, if you don't have calls and you want to wait for some calls, you wait. If you want me to go ahead, I can go ahead until you start taking your calls. At least you've given out the numbers. Just give me a wave and give me a sign, and I'll just go right back over to you as soon as you have your call. All right. here's what I wanted to say, Marcus. I want to go over to you because I mean I'm sure that you have a lot more that you'd like to contribute. You've seen, you've been witnessing, you've been hearing and listening to what is going on in Dominica over the last 12 months and beyond that. I mean, give me your further thoughts about some of the things that you would like to really see change, how you would like to see them change, especially as it relates to helping to improve the lives and the living standards and the quality of life of the ordinary people. And let us face it, Marcus, you know, there are very ordinary people who can very often do extraordinary things if they have the opportunity. Then they just need a chance. Sometimes you see a guy just lying around the corner there, but this guy's ideas, if you sit and talk to him, you'll see that he has ideas. He may not know exactly how to implement some of them, he may not have, but somebody needs to help him and guide him and embrace him and accept his ideas and work with it and make the necessary resources available to him so he can do it. There are hundreds of young people throughout Dominica, in every community, who have skills and ambitions and ideas that they want to do something. They want to be self-sufficient. They want to self-actualize. But somebody needs to take them seriously and give them an opportunity. Marcus, your thoughts on some of those things?
Sheridan, let me first say before we live out here tonight, when the listeners hear the shows that you put out on the radio, they tend to take it personal. To all those who listening tonight, let us let them know it's not a bash the government program. It's a program of information that brings the message to the people. My brother Ken just said, statistics tell us that our government is not performing. So we must let the people, those who don't understand and who seek information, bring it to the public. So now let me take you into where the trickle down economic is not working. That's a Ronald Reagan term I'm going to borrow. It's not working for us at home. You just mentioned a little man trying to get a chance so he could move forward in a business and whatnot. At one time, we were the envy of the region. We had more local businesses. I heard your life story one time by Trini. You were selling to Jamaica. Jamaica had factories set up by America in Haiti, Hispaniola, Santo Domingo. But here you was, a little guy from a smaller island in a big market because you got a chance and you had a vision, and evidently the atmosphere was right for you based on good governance, and areas were opening for you. And as a little guy, you took a chance and you won. And that's what I'm talking about. I often see a young guy standing on the corner and people call them thugs. I don't really call young guys selling on the corner the drugs that you see them peddling, because this young guy sitting on the corner selling drugs, he could be a future businessman. But because he has no opportunity and he is out to survive, this is what he's gonna do when every other door is closed to him. So let's go to our actual governance of the country, Sheridan. We are selling passport, and we have made passport our main product. Dominica has more potential than just passport. Then we take away.
Marcus, you want to give me Lambi 1 minute? I think Lambi was making us he wants to take a little call. Lambi, go right ahead.
The call on the overseas line, please go ahead. Caller, are you still there? The call is gone.
All right, so you let us know when you have another call, Lambi. In the meantime, I'll just go back to Marcus.
All right, Sheridan, we take away all other avenues of making a livelihood, independent livelihood, where a small hotelier, a farmer, a contractor, a bus driver, the little man trying to make ends meet, doing things to feed a family, and oftentimes an extended family. Our passport is generating a whole lot of money for people who are not even born Dominicans, people out there in the Europe, in Dubai, and these countries,
Let's take a
right?
call, Lambi.
Caller, please go ahead. Caller, please go ahead.
Lambi seems to be having problems with his calls. All right, so let's go. Let's keep going, Marcus. He's having some problems with taking the calls. Let's go ahead.
Point I'm making, Sheridan, is we are getting all this money from selling our sovereignty, right? And we are not seeing the benefit to the native people. We have contractors coming from everywhere. Chinese getting the contracts, the Montreal management, these guys getting the contract from outside of the country. We are not training our young people. We are not training, giving a man who wants to be in on a project, a contractor, a chance. Let me tell you something. There are laws in certain areas of governance in America, in certain cities, that you are required to give a 10% of the contract. When you get a contract as a major contractor, you are required to give a 10% interest to a minority contractor as a business person. In other words, they make you have to give someone a chance to build and to rise. And I've heard the argument in the last three shows on the other side. And these guys are telling us about the people don't have capacity. Well, I'm here to tell you, Sheridan, if you never give me a chance to come on the radio, the people will not hear my voice. If you never talk to Alvin or Kent or anyone else, the point I'm making is we must reach back and reach for another to give one a hand when you reach a certain level in life. The worst thing you could do is to turn your back on your people because it will come back to haunt you. You see, the lack of transparency, our government spends money that we have no idea of what is being spent. We have no way of going to say, well, put your hands on the paper and look at the detailed uh, 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 expenditures. A government spends money with a company where they get a bid to do the project and then comes back in the next sitting of a parliament with a cost overrun, say, well, look, we need X amount. The price of the project has just doubled and almost tripled. You know, it's impossible to have these things done in any country and not have some kind of recourse. The point I'm making, Sheridan, is we are not being governed by a suitable government. And with that kind of problem, we run a risk of running a show and the ship will get a shipwreck. When you see Dominica falls, it will fall hard because I'm looking at this thing and I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. It is going to be a time when the truth is going to hit us and it hit us so hard for those who support a government who does not keep any accountability to the people. It's going to be a problem.
One of the things that Lambi, you want to take a quick call before I go over to Alvin? You didn't get it? All right. Okay, so Lambi's having some technical problem, but I just wanted to say this as I transition across to Alvin, Marcus. Wouldn't it be a better idea to create a cannabis industry where you really grow this thing, bring in all the experts? There's a lot of experts on it. It's a world product now because we know you can extract the same way you can extract the cold compress and the heat compress oil from olives. You can do the same thing with cannabis, cold and hot compressed. And this thing is tremendous value. All the big pharmaceutical companies are using these oils to make medicines. It's all over the website. If you look on the websites, you see all the big pharmacies are talking about the use of cannabis oils. They're making millions from that. We have this natural plant in Dominica, wide varieties of it, grows very easily, very quickly. Instead of creating a major industry where we could make a lot of young people get wealthy from it, it's probably not such a good idea to just to legalize what 2.3 grams or something for people to be able to use privately for recreation. how is that going to benefit them? Instead of creating an industry where they could sell that product to factories, they compress and extract the oils, high value, take those oils, get these pharmaceutical companies to do the agri-business there to add value to those products and create other products that they can then retail, distribute and retail and sell to the world, because the pharmacies, these big farmers, they already have the markets. They control the market of all the drugstores. They're selling the products already. A lot of these products being made in the United States, made in Canada, made all over the place now. And they're finding their way under the shelves in these big pharmaceuticals. Why are we doing that instead of?
Let me say one thing. You mentioned cannabis. It must be known that one plant is a very, very versatile plant. Don't just stop at medicine. It goes to textile. It goes to rope. They have many byproducts that cannabis can really give to you and create a massive industry under one roof. And this is a good idea that you just pull out. And these are the things I'm talking about, having a government, like Alvin say, a visionary government. This is what we need. What we really need is people who lead from the front, people with vision. And if I don't see what you see, and you know others who can bring this thing forward, you get them people together. You bring all the great minds together, and you build a force that cannot, it's amazing how far this little country can go. We could be world recognized because of our soil, our rainfall, very high rainfall. Whatever Dominica choose to do, if with the right people leading it, we can do it.
Alvin, let me just go over to you because I know you had started talking about the whole question of the budgets and some of these supplementary appropriations. And I know Kent will want to add to that as well as we go along. Let me just go over to you, Alvin. I know there's a number of other things that you still have to talk about that you'd like to talk about. Let me just hand over to you right now.
All right, thank you, Sheridan. Let me first of all just briefly comment on Kent's observation as it relates to creed and the creation of the act and all of that. And I agree to a certain extent with the way he has positioned it, and that could possibly be the rationale why it came into being. But let us not lose sight of the fact that when a government goes into parliament and legislate, create a piece of legislation, that we should just turn our backs to it or don't hold the government accountable to that. This all boils back, Sheridan, as you recall from Dr. Luquent, that was on our show. It all boils back to the Constitution. So if you just feel you can go in Parliament because funding agency says to do that, so you just willy-nilly goes, you pass an act, it's on the statute book. I mean, look at the IPO, integrity in public office. There's an act, but they passed the act, and who cares? You know, Resilient Act, we passed the act. Who cares? I mean, we just had the Procurement Act that passed, and we had Tony LeBlanc on the show on Q, pointing out how dangerous that piece of legislation was. The point I'm making, we cannot, as a nation, we cannot, as our people, turn our backs on those things. And while it may be true, they may have put the document in such a way because of the funding agency, that aspect of what we call governance and running a country is critical. It's, to my mind, it's fundamental. And to respond to what you've just said, Sheridan, that suggestion that you just proposed regarding cannabis and so, that's not going to happen. Because I'll tell you, and Marcus pointed out to some of that, leadership of any country, of any government, of any organization requires a certain basic requirement. It calls for integrity. It calls for honesty. It calls for transparency. It calls for truth. So clearly, we are in a state where there is no governance. And when there is no governance, no matter all the suggestions that Kent might have put forward, and might say to them, go ahead and use it or take the ideas. What you, Sheridan, has put forward, what Marcus may have put forward, it's not going to happen when the leadership lacks some of the basic fundamental values that come to that leadership and the governance. And it brings me to what Ken said earlier. If government don't do the right thing, and he stopped it there, if they don't do the right thing, then who must ensure that they do the right thing? And what must we do as a people to ensure they do the right thing? That's the crux of the matter. And that might segue into the whole question of electoral reform and all the other stuff. You mentioned, of course, the supplementary budgets and all of that. Let's just go back for a little while to the Director of Audit report, the last report of 2019. And let me quote for you, bear with me, section 521 to 525. That's the Director of Audit. Again, a creature of the Constitution. That's who it is, you know, a creature of the Constitution, the Director of Audit. By law. This is not a little guy like me and you know, Sheridan, that you decide to say, well, this is right or wrong. Okay. This is the Director of Audit that does his or her work based on independence, objectivity, confidentiality, credibility, integrity, professionalism. This is what guides the function of that office. And it says there, action by Director of Audit. An integral component of the audit process was a formal request to the permanent secretary, which is also referred to as the accounting officer, and they were in that case referring to the Ministry of Housing and Lands, for a response to the draft audit report, which contained audit findings, observation, and recommendation, the draft. So even before the director decide, let me make this thing final, he says, wait, maybe there was a little misunderstanding, or maybe you have the information, or maybe you need to get clarity, or maybe something wasn't right. So, you know, give me what it is so I can complete my report. In accordance with the provision of the Audit Act, the request sought an explanation, clarification, or justification to the audit finding and observations. The formal request dated February 20th, 2020, was dispatched to the accounting officer, and a follow-up request dated April 19, 2021, this year, was also dispatched. The audit department has received no response from the accounting officer, that is, the permanent secretary. Neither has there been an acknowledgement of receipt of the request. Now, the permanent secretary is also a creature of the Constitution. And the accounting officer, again, the law. Sheridan, this is not do what you want as you want. Legally, you're obligated under the law to act. This is not you running your thing and you decide, well, oh, I can do what I want as I want. A comprehensive audit report which contained a number of audit findings, observation, audit accounting matters, and recommendations highlighting action that are expected to improve efficiency and inhibit potential risk was submitted to the financial secretary on May 13, 2020. So not just the accounting officer, the permanent secretary, but the financial secretary, who is pretty much oversees all the accounting officers. Again, there's an act, there's a finance act, Sheridan. Consistent with the responsibility of the Director of Audit under Section 8 of the Audit Act, Chapter 6301, a report of the stated audit findings and observation was submitted for the intervention of the Office of the Honorable Attorney General on June 3rd, 2020. So you see the steps? It went to the permanent secretary, went to the accounting officer, it went to the financial secretary. Now it goes to the Attorney General, the chief legal person of the land. In our instances in the US, that's the prosecutor. So you're saying, please, please intervene. At the time of submitting this audit report to the Honorable Minister of Finance, the audit department had not received feedback from the Office of the Honorable Attorney General and the Financial Secretary. Can you imagine what we're talking about here? Can you really put in perspective the extent? So all of these other things really, they're important. Yes, don't get me wrong. Even the activities that I refer to in the creed and those actions, they're important. But look at the fundamental issue there at hand, Sheridan, governance. I mean, how dare you that the director for it writes to you regarding a matter of public finance, and you don't even have the courtesy to respond to the director of audit and say, Director of audit, acknowledge receipt of your letter. The matter has been looked into. Even if you say that and you don't intend to look, but even if you just say that you acknowledge receipt of your letter, the matter will be looked into. Or the financial secretary, I received your correspondence. I will get in touch with the accounting officer and follow up. Not even an acknowledgement. So you see where we're at, Sheridan. We're no little child's play situation, you know. We're in a serious matter because the Attorney General is charged with ensuring that matters are dealt with in a legal environment, and whatever is done legally correct. The fact that the director of audit had to write to you first, she wrote to the accounting officer, normal protocol, permanent secretary. Tell me something. And draft. Remember, I mentioned the word draft in her report. Tell me something. Something may be amiss. So what it is. Okay, we have the receipt or whatever. No response. She then went one step further. She goes to the financial secretary. No response. She moved one step further. She goes to the attorney general. No response. Are we running a country of governments of laws or of men? What are we running? So all of this cannabis thing you're talking about makes no sense. Now, let me just say, as far as the activities in this CRID document, it's an acknowledgement that there are deficiencies in those areas. Granted that it was designed or structured in a manner to appease or to get the attraction of foreign assistance or financial intervention. But the fact remains that as we speak now, those areas of activities are wanting. People, as Kent rightly say, are struggling. Tourism is mentioned there. What is happening? What has happened with tourism over the last 12 months? I mean, yes, we talk about pandemic and COVID, but like you rightly said, and Ken pointed it out, Dominica is not the only one immune to the pandemic and COVID-19. St. Kitts is, St. Lucia is, Barbados is. I mean, agriculture. What is happening with agriculture? One other area that was mentioned in there is at the Bay Oil Cooperative. It says there that Dominica was contributing 80% or thereabout of the global Bay Oil market prior to Maria. And what was intended to do from 2020, 21 and going onward. Questions remain. Has Bay Oil farmers really been given the necessary support or the assistance that is required to ensure that they can again reactivate the Bay Oil industry and all of that? These are the fundamental questions. But as I said, it goes beyond those activities. We now have to address a very fundamental, serious problem as it relates to governance in the country. That a government feels that they are of men rather than of laws, and that we can go in parliament, pass whatever legislation we want. We don't owe you nothing. We don't have to answer you. The legislation don't have to take effect. It could just be legislation on the books. And the director of audit can write 100 letters if he or she wants to the attorney general. I don't have to answer you. Whichever way we decide to spend the money, we spend the money. So if the government does not do the right thing, who gets the government to do the right thing? And what do we do as a people to get the government to do the right thing? And I think, as I said, that brings us into that bigger conversation now on the question of electoral reform, of course. And because bear in mind, let me tell you, Sheridan, you know that, and all of us on the panel know that. You as an individual, no matter whether you're in America, whether in Dominica, St. Vincent, or wherever, Politics and economics is what determine your welfare as a human being. These two things.
Yes.
Politics and economics. These two things. And if the politics is bad as it is, and the economic is just as bad, then clearly your well-being as an individual is not going to be best served. Politics and economics. We see it right here in the United States. You see right now, Biden is having a hell of a challenge with one of his own persons from his party trying to pass his Bill Better plan in the Senate. Politics, economics. So I'm saying so to say, Sheridan, that, and I've said so repeatedly when I'm on the show, that we talk, and yes, the talking is good. I'm not saying we should stop talking. We need to, as Marcus said, we got to educate the people, and hopefully one day the people will come to understand where they are and take the right decision and make the right course of action. But I think where we are right now is, as I think Ken has rightly put it, if the government do not do the right thing, which seems to be the case from what I've just read from the other report, then what do we do as a people? And I would hope that moving into 2022, that's the question we're going to ask ourselves. If government continues not doing the right thing to us, the people, then what do we do as a people to get them to do the right thing, or to get some other government that will do the right thing for us, the people?
So Alvin, so yeah, we're running out of time actually, and so we want to just start winding down. But I think as you live on that note about governance, I want to put it to Marcus, and then I'm going to put it to Ken as well. I mean, do you think that we have a crisis of governance? Because it seems to me everything comes back to that. I mean, if our governance system is the right, and if we're taking the right decisions, I mean, things like the act that Alvin was talking about, all the plans that they were talking about there in terms of resilience and sustainability. I mean, if the purpose of CREED was really to implement and get things done, would it have got done? In other words, and even looking at the director of audit report, auditor report, I mean, in terms of ensuring that you do what it is that is in unit, some things are wrong, you need to correct them, nobody replies. Do we have a system of governance that is in crisis? We're hearing about so much poverty. We're hearing young people, they're not getting their ideas into the mix. They have to be standing on the side and looking while foreign contractors are getting all the work. And the heavy equipment people, go invest it so much, the banks are ready to seize the property because they're unable to repay the advances they got from the banks. Do you think as we wrap up, Marcus, are we facing a crisis of governance?
Sheridan, I do think so. We have men in office, but we lack leaders. Because you are elected to be in a leadership position does not make you a leader. And definitely the men we have in the labor government running the country right now are not leaders. They have proven that because they had 20 years to show the people what they are made of, and we don't see. And before I close and let Kent say his piece, I want to highlight a state in the United States called South Carolina. Sheridan, there is a certain thing that you look when you have discussions like this. You look at, and Kent mentioned it, statistics, and you look at things that have been proven. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel. You look at someone else's action and you can learn from the action, or you can understand where they made a mistake because you are paying close attention. Let me highlight South Carolina. BMW, some years back, intended to bring a factory to South Carolina. They were one of the first places that they intended to build a factory, and they were looking at other areas. But what South Carolina did, they jumped the gun. They opened up institutions to train the people to be prepared that when BMW came to South Carolina, they were prepared. And by doing that, they convinced BMW to build that factory in South Carolina. And today, this is where it's at. And they have taken a lot of initiatives like that as far as homelessness or the less fortunate amongst the state's citizenry. They have taken issues like building homes, moderate size homes, moderate costs, where people who are not on the higher earning level can own a home and be made human again. So you won't have to feel like you're less than or you are not belonging to. And this is the thing that we are talking about. A government must recognize where they are and the condition of the people. And you must build the people, pick them up and build the people. When you build the people, you build a nation. When you build a nation, you build your region. And we are lacking on that. And before I go, you mentioned agro-tourism. Grenada is doing it right now. Grenada has taken it as a serious venture for that. Grenada has certain things in agriculture. They are not called the Spice Island for joke, like we call Dominica the Nature Isle. They make good use of that name and they build on it. And these are the things that we are talking about. The statistics are out there, the examples are out there, but the people who are in office must recognize these things and see where and what they can do to build their people. And this is what all we are talking about, my brother. Thank you very much.
Precisely, and thanks a lot for that, Marcus. Always good to have you. Always love to have this show when we talk about the people's voices because the people's voice is so important. People are in the people who are in the kitchen who feel the heat. They know what
Yes.
we're talking about. We don't have all the answers here, but the people in their households, women have to do the groceries and to balance their budget every week. They know what's happening. You know, they can tell you what's going on in the country because they feel it. Kent, let's wind up with your closing remarks as well, because I mean, time is really not on our
Yeah,
side now. But I know you
yes,
have
thank
one or
you,
two
sir.
things you still want to add, Kent, and then I
Yes,
will go to
well,
Alvin for
in
his
order to
final
answer
thought.
the question you asked, do we have a crisis of governance?
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, yes. This is the biggest constraint toward development by far, the crisis of governance. We have a governance problem in the Caribbean generally in terms of our system of governance. And we don't have time to go into that part. It affects all countries. But beyond that, Dominica has a unique, a special problem. Corruption. And corruption affects other countries too. But Dominica takes it to a different level. As the Al Jazeera report said, this guy had said in this report, I have seen corruption in this world. And whereas in other countries, the corrupt people take 10% for themselves, but they give the country 90%. These guys in Dominica do the reverse. They take 90% for themselves and they give the country 10%. Yes, we definitely have a crisis of governance. These guys disregard the law seemingly with impunity. Alvin just raised the question. The example with this is amazing what you just laid on before the people, Alvin. That the director of audit said there's a clear disregard for the constitution, clear disregard for the law, not only by the government, as in the political directorate, but also by those the civil servants, the managers, the high level civil servants. There's a clear, and it looks as if that this government specializes in corrupting persons, in corrupting state institutions, and in putting their people into certain positions to facilitate wrongdoing. So we definitely have a crisis of governance when a government can so corrupt state institutions and senior government officials. We have a crisis of governance. We have a government that disregards the electoral laws, a government that disregards the appropriation laws. We don't have the time to go into them, but CBI and so on. We have a government that seek to change laws to support corruption, like the procurement law and the electoral laws. We have a government that has corrupted the police as well. And we have a police that acts in a way they themselves incite violence. I mean, I was amazed as the report I heard from one of your reporters, Sheridan, concerning the way the police behaved just last week. I mean, to go through and hit a guy in his face with the fist by a policeman without provocation. That seems to tells me that the police want to create a situation of conflict. They are the ones inciting violence. The question is, why are they doing this? Are they doing it to support the government? We have a crisis of government. We have to rescue Dominica. And that's the question Alvin raised. If the government won't do the right thing, if the government won't do it, then what do we do? Well, you know what we say? It's time for the people to hold the government accountable. It's time for political parties to act in the interest of the nation. It's time for the unions to act in line with others in the interest of the nation. It's time for faith-based organizations to also join that effort. It's time for every single Dominican to say, we are going to hold you accountable for electoral reform, for doing the right thing, for doing the things that will take us where we need to be as a country. It's time for us to hold the government accountable. And I am telling you, this is why NJAM was constituted. I know this is not an NJAM program, but let me end with this. And this is why we need everyone to listen to us on as we explain a little more of what NJAM will be doing. Why? But that is the question. It's time to hold the government accountable. It's time to rescue the country. It's time to take back our country. So we want everyone to join ranks. Let's come together and let's do that. The government won't do it. We need to hold them accountable as a people. We, the people, must step in and demand it, and not just demand it, take it.
Thanks a lot, Ken. And Alvin, you have the final word as we wind down here this evening.
All right, thank you, Sheridan. Let me just say thank you to my fellow panelists here, Kent and Marcus and Lambe in the studio, of course. And to say thanks to our many listeners, I'm sure, and viewers on Facebook. We were not able to get some of the calls. Usually that's what technology sometimes posts for us. But I really want to say thank you for, again, engaging me in the discussion here this evening. It's one way of educating and trying to empower the people to take back the power into their hands. This happens throughout the world. We've seen it. I don't want to start to go into that area, but we've seen where people have taken back the power into their hand. I think clearly from what I have articulated, both in terms of the CRIT document, both in terms of the Director of Audit report, it shows clearly a crisis of governance in the country. We are officers, senior public officers like that, persons who you expect to uphold the laws, are treated with impunity the way in which this country is governed. And I think as we go into a new year, each and every one of us, Dominicans, in Dominica and outside of Dominica, need to ask ourselves that fundamental questions. Is that the direction we want to continue? Because clearly, if that is the trajectory of where we want to go, all of this other stuff that we're talking about wouldn't mean anything. Because it would mean that folks are going to treat with impunity. They will disregard whatever laws that are passed, whether it's legislated in parliament, whether it's wherever it is. They'll have no regard for any public offices as we know it. I mean, I worked in the audit department with folks like Ozzy Lewis, Gorman Robin, I mean, you know, Sybil Barron. I mean, those were the days when let me tell you, when Ozzy would have sent a letter in Ozzy Lewis days, and he sent a letter to a permanent secretary, do you think that permanent secretary can choose and say he's not responding? I mean, this is unheard of. I mean, this blows my mind. Not even an acknowledgement. The Director of Audit, Ozzy Lewis, would have sent a letter to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General do not respond. Man, Ozzy would get pen on paper and would start to ask a couple questions of the Office of the Attorney General. What's going on? Did you not get my letter? Did it got misplaced or something? So I think clearly we have a serious governance issue. And as a people too, as we move, especially the Dominicans back home, as we move into the new year, you got to ask yourself a question too. I've used that phrase before. Judge Bush used it. Are you better off now than you were 12 months ago? Seriously, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, am I better off now than I was 12 months ago? What does my bank account look like? Do I have a savings? Can I buy a house in the next 2 years? Can I start a business? The business that I have, can I get some capital to expand? Can I send my child to college, university? My child is very bright and I want to send him up to the States to do a program. Can I afford to do that? These are the fundamental questions we need to ask ourselves. Are you better off now than you were 12 months ago as you entered into 2022? So I would hope again that through these programs that we become more enlightened, we become more engaged, we become more empowered, so that like as Ken Ryder said, if the government don't do the right thing, then we become empowered enough to do the right thing to put us under the right track. Because 7 years from now will be a nation, a 50-year-old independent nation. It's not too far away, just 7 years down the road. And we got to get our act together now in order for us to see the results of the benefit of what it is to be a 50-year-old nation. Thank you, Sheridan.
And thank you so much, Alvin and Kent and Marcus and Lambi and Sherwin and DJ Shan and all of our listeners and our callers who could not really make it through tonight due to technical problems. I also want to say thank you to all our listeners all over the globe, in every community in Dominica who've been listening and following us. This is not something that we do every Sunday night. We're doing this because it's the end of the year 2021. This year has been such a significant year that we thought we'd want to do a year-end review of what went on during the year. And we're going to do it again tomorrow night with another group, this time a group of very dynamic women, and Mrs. Cara Shillingford Marsh, Maslin Edwards, and we're also going to have Dr. Simone Matthew. So we're going to have quite a dynamic panel of women, and they're going to give their solid views in terms of what they thought, their own reflections on what happened in the course of the past year and more, and then their own ideas and projections for what Dominica should be doing going into the 2022. And I will ask the same question: is Dominica facing a crisis of governance? We'll see what the women have to say about that. So, gentlemen, thanks a lot for that tonight. And then on Tuesday night, we'll be having Dr. Irving Andre, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, and Dr. Swinburne Augustine, and Dr. Dion George, and Dr. Thompson Fontaine. And I will ask them the same question as well. And we want their own review in terms of what transpired the year and what they see going forward for Dominica. So, gentlemen, thank you. And I want to wish you all a very pleasant good evening. And I hope the rest of the holiday season right into the New Year's is terrific. You spend a lot of time with friends and family and loved ones, have a lot of fun. Don't eat too much because then you got to go back on that diet again after New Year's. So thank you again, gentlemen. And I want to say a pleasant good night to everybody. And take care.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Sheridan. All right, Ken, Marcus,
Okay,
Lambi.
guys.
All right, Marcus.
All right,
Bye.
guys.
Not
Yes.
Take care,
Yeah.
Lambi.
Have a good week. All
Yeah.
right, take care.
All right,
Bye.
guys.
Guys. All right.
I heard big
Okay.
voice.
I'm sorry.
Very good night.